in a world where a tiny turtle followed a crying leopard cub for miles. An extraordinary adventure unfolded that would warm the hearts of all who witnessed it. Tilly, the small turtle, heard a heart-wrenching cry that echoed through the vibrant jungle, stirring a deep sense of compassion within her. What she didn't realize was that this journey would challenge her courage and redefine the meaning of friendship. Get ready to witness a tale of bravery, where every tear leads to a connection that transcends all boundaries and melts even the coldest of hearts. Deep in the heart of the ancient jungle, where emerald sunlight filtered through layers of dense, whispering leaves, creating mesmerizing patterns on the forest floor, Tilly, the tiny turtle, was enjoying what had begun as a perfectly peaceful afternoon. Her small, intricately patterned shell glistened in the dappled light as she munched contentedly on fresh green leaves that tasted of morning dew and earth. The familiar sounds of the jungle, birds calling to one another, insects humming their constant melody, and the occasional rustle of creatures moving through the undergrowth, created a symphony that had been the soundtrack to Tilly's entire existence. Suddenly, a sound cut through the jungle's ambient chorus. A cry so filled with raw fear and profound loneliness that it stopped Tilly mid-bite, sending a chill through her small body despite the humid air. The desperate wail echoed through the trees, sending colorful birds scattering into the brilliant blue sky, their wings flashing like jewels against the sunlight. Even the monkeys, usually chattering endlessly in the canopy above, fell silent at the sound of such distress. What was that? Tilly whispered to herself, her heart racing beneath her protective shell. The cry came again, more urgent this time, more desperate. A sound that seemed to carry the weight of unbearable suffering. It pulled at something deep within Tilly's soul, something she couldn't ignore no matter how hard she tried. Tilly hesitated, looking down at her tiny legs that had never carried her far from her familiar territory. What can I possibly do? She questioned herself. Doubt clouding her thoughts like the mist that sometimes rolled through the jungle at dawn. I'm just a small turtle in this vast, unpredictable jungle. Whatever is crying probably needs help from someone bigger, faster, stronger. A mighty elephant who could crash through barriers, or perhaps a clever monkey who could swing quickly through the trees. The cry pierced the air once more, this time with a trembling vulnerability that seemed to reach out specifically to Tilly, as if calling her name. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before her pressing down like the heaviest of rains. The jungle, for all its beauty, was filled with lurking dangers. Predators with razor-sharp teeth hiding in shadows. Treacherous terrain that could trap a small creature like herself. Rushing waters that could sweep her away in an instant. Every instinct told her to retreat into her shell, to stay safe in the world she knew. But what if there's no one else? She thought, her mind racing with possibilities both heroic and terrifying. What if I'm the only one who hears these cries? What if I'm the only hope for whatever is suffering out there? The thought of another creature in pain, alone and afraid while she did nothing, created an ache in her heart that felt heavier than any shell. With determination surging through her like the life-giving waters of the seasonal rains, Tilly took a deep, steadying breath that expanded her tiny chest. I may be small, she said aloud, her voice stronger than she expected, echoing slightly in the sudden stillness of the jungle. But that doesn't mean I can't make a difference. Sometimes the smallest creatures can have the biggest hearts. Setting her fears aside, though not forgetting them, for fear was a necessary companion in the jungle. Tilly began her journey, her tiny legs moving with newfound purpose across the forest floor. Each step was small, seemingly insignificant against the vastness of the world around her. But her heart was mighty, fueled by compassion that grew with every determined movement forward. She navigated through twisted roots that rose from the earth like ancient serpents, around massive tree trunks wider than 10 turtles lined up shell to shell, and past vibrant flowers that seemed to watch her progress with curious, colorful faces. The journey was arduous for one so small. What might have been a simple hop for a frog or a quick dash for a squirrel was an expedition for Tilly, requiring all her strength and resolve. The cries continued, guiding her like a beacon through the maze of green. Sometimes they grew fainter, causing Tilly's heart to sink with worry that she might be too late. But then they would rise again, renewing her determination to press on despite aching legs and the growing distance from everything familiar. Little did Tilly know that this single act of courage, this choice to follow her heart rather than her fear, would lead her to an encounter that would change not just her life, but the life of another creature who desperately needed someone, anyone, to care enough to answer their call for help. In the grand tapestry of jungle life, where each creature played their assigned role, Tilly was about to step beyond the boundaries of what was expected, into a story that would later be whispered among the leaves and carried on the wind. But what awaited her beyond the thick, imposing underbrush was something no turtle could have prepared for. A sight that would challenge everything she thought she knew about courage, about friendship, and about the unexpected connections that can form between the most unlikely of creatures. After what seemed like hours of determined trudging through the dense, unforgiving undergrowth, Tilly finally pushed through a curtain of hanging vines that cascaded like a waterfall of emerald green. Her tiny legs trembled with exhaustion, each step now requiring twice the effort it had when she began her journey. The once vibrant forest around her had grown quieter, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath in anticipation. The desperate cries that had guided her this far had grown louder, more insistent, pulling her forward with an urgency she couldn't ignore despite her aching limbs and parched throat. As she emerged into a small clearing dappled with golden shafts of afternoon sunlight, Tilly froze, her eyes widening at the sight before her. The world seemed to stand still as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. There, huddled beneath the sprawling, gnarled roots of an ancient banyan tree that had witnessed centuries of jungle life, was a leopard cub. Not just any leopard cub, but one whose spotted coat, normally a camouflage of golden yellows and rich browns designed by nature to blend perfectly with the dappled light of the forest, was now dusty and tangled with burrs and twigs. His small body quivered with each heart-wrenching sob that escaped his throat, a sound that seemed too sorrowful to come from one so young. Tears matted the fur around his eyes, which were squeezed shut in a despair so profound it made Tilly's heart constrict painfully in her chest. Tilly had never been this close to a leopard before, even a small one. In the natural order of the jungle, turtles and leopards existed in entirely separate worlds, intersecting only in the brief, terrifying moment when predator meets prey. Every instinct in her tiny body screamed for her to retreat into her shell, to pull in her head and legs and become nothing more than an innocuous bump on the forest floor. Her racing heart urged her to hide from this predator, this creature born with the instinct to hunt. But something about the cub's pitiful cries kept her rooted to the spot. The vulnerability in those sobs transcended the boundaries between species. This wasn't a fearsome hunter surveying his domain. This was a child, lost and afraid, separated from everything that represented safety and love in his world. "Hello," Tilly called softly, her voice barely audible above the cub's sobs, carried away by the gentle breeze that rustled through the clearing. She immediately questioned her decision to announce her presence. Was she being foolishly brave, or simply foolish? The leopard's eyes snapped open, revealing brilliant amber irises flecked with gold and ringed with black. Eyes designed to spot the slightest movement in the deepest shadows of the jungle. Now, those remarkable eyes were filled with tears that caught the sunlight like diamonds. He scrambled backward with surprising speed for one so distressed, pressing himself against the tree roots as if trying to become one with the ancient wood, his small claws digging into the earth with a desperation that sent tiny plumes of dust into the air. Who are you?" he demanded, trying to sound fierce despite the tremor in his voice that betrayed his fear. His small chest heaved with rapid breaths, and his ears lay flat against his head in a defensive posture. "Stay back. Don't come any closer." "I'm Tilly," she replied, remaining perfectly still, understanding that any sudden movement might send the frightened cub into a panic, or worse, trigger his predatory instincts. She kept her voice gentle, soothing like the murmur of a stream over smooth stones. "I heard you crying from quite a distance. Are you hurt? Is there something I can do to help?" The cub sniffled, wiping his nose with a paw in a gesture so childlike and vulnerable that it further melted Tilly's initial fear. His whiskers trembled as he regarded her with a mixture of suspicion and desperate hope. "No, I'm not hurt. Not on the outside, anyway," he admitted, his voice small and broken. "I'm lost. I can't find my mother." His voice broke on the last word, cracking with emotion, and fresh tears welled in his eyes, spilling over to create new tracks in his dusty fur. "We were hunting together at dawn, moving through the tall grass near the eastern ridge. I got distracted by a butterfly with wings the color of sunset. It was so beautiful, and I just wanted to touch it. Maybe play with it for a moment." His ears drooped further with shame. "When I looked up, she was gone, and now I don't know which way is home. I've been wandering for hours, calling for her until my throat hurts." "What's your name?" Tilly asked gently, sensing that establishing this simple connection might help calm the distressed cub. "Leo," he replied after a moment's hesitation, his tail curling around his body protectively, the tip twitching nervously against his spotted flank. "My mother calls me her little warrior, but I don't feel very brave right now." This admission seemed to cost him, his pride warring with his need for comfort. Tilly took a cautious step forward, moving slowly so as not to startle him. The distance between them, between prey and predator, between stranger and potential friend, seemed both vast and insignificant in that moment. "I'm sorry you're lost, Leo. That must be very frightening, especially for someone your age. Being separated from your family is one of the scariest things that can happen to anyone in the jungle." Leo eyed the small turtle suspiciously, his initial fear giving way to confusion that furrowed his brow and caused his head to tilt slightly to one side. "Why would you care what happens to me? You're just a turtle. And anyway," he added, a note of dejection entering his voice, "what could you possibly do to help me? You're so small, so slow. You can't climb trees to look for her, or run fast enough to catch up with her if we spot her." His assessment wasn't cruel, merely the practical observation of a young predator who had been taught to evaluate the capabilities of other creatures. The words stung like nettles against Tilly's skin, but she understood the fear and pragmatism behind them. In the jungle, survival often depended on such honest assessments. "Sometimes being small isn't so bad," she said thoughtfully, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "I notice things others might miss, like the subtle changes in the forest floor that show where animals have passed, or the almost invisible trails that wind through the undergrowth. and I'm very good at finding my way. Turtles have to be, you know. We don't move quickly, so we have to move smartly. Leo's ears perked up slightly at this, his interest momentarily overcoming his despair. Really? You can track? In my own way, Tilly nodded. And I know this part of the jungle well. Every rock, every stream, every landmark. I may move slowly, but I've had time to learn this forest in ways that faster creatures never do. Leo's ears flattened against his head again as a new wave of despair washed over him. But my mother could be anywhere by now. The jungle is huge, and I've been lost for so long. His voice dropped to a whisper that seemed to carry all the weight of his young heart's fear. What if she's not even looking for me? What if she thinks I was taken by another predator and has given up? What if she's forgotten about me and moved on? No mother would forget her child, Tilly said firmly, with a conviction that surprised even herself. Not a leopard mother, not a turtle mother, not any mother in this jungle. She's looking for you right now, I'm sure of it. Probably frantic with worry, searching every corner of the forest. And we're going to find her? We? Leo's eyes widened in genuine surprise, his tail uncurling slightly from its protective position around his body. Yes, we, Tilly nodded, her determination unwavering despite the enormity of the task ahead. I may be small, but as I said, I know this part of the jungle like the patterns on my own shell. And 2 sets of eyes are better than 1, even if 1 set belongs to a turtle. She offered what she hoped was a reassuring smile. Besides, you have the keen senses of a leopard. You can hear and smell things I can't. Together, we might have a better chance than either of us would alone. Leo looked at Tilly for a long moment, studying her with the intensity only a young predator could muster. His gaze seemed to penetrate to her very core, as if assessing not just her capabilities, but her sincerity. Then, almost imperceptibly, his shoulders relaxed, and the rigid tension that had held his small frame began to ease. You would really help me? Even though I'm a leopard and you're, well, potential lunch, Tilly supplied with unexpected humor that surprised a small, hiccuping laugh from the cub. I was going to say prey, but yes, Leo admitted, a flicker of embarrassment crossing his features. Aren't you afraid I might, get hungry later? I'm helping you because you need help, Tilly said, simply, her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. And because everyone deserves a friend when they're afraid. As for getting hungry, she gave him a knowing look. I think we both know there's plenty of food in this jungle that doesn't talk back or offer to help you find your mother. A fragile hope flickered in Leo's amber eyes, like the first tentative rays of dawn breaking through the night. Do you really think we can find her? The jungle is so big, and there are so many dangers. Tilly moved closer, until she was right beside the cub's paw. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his young body. Close enough that a single swipe of those tiny but sharp claws could end her. It was a gesture of trust that spoke louder than any words could. I promise you, Leo, I will not rest until we do. We'll start right now, and we won't stop until you're back with your family. The journey might be difficult, and yes, there are dangers, but we'll face them together. For the first time since Tilly had found him, Leo's mouth curved into the ghost of a smile, tentative and fragile, but real. He lowered his head until his nose was level with Tilly's shell, close enough that she could feel his warm breath against her. Thank you, he whispered, the simple words carrying a weight of gratitude that filled the clearing more completely than his sobs had moments before. I've been so scared, so alone. I didn't think anyone would help me. Well, you're not alone anymore, Tilly assured him, feeling a surge of protective affection for this lost cub that defied all the natural laws of the jungle. Now, tell me everything you remember about where you last saw your mother. Every detail might help us find our way. As Leo began to describe the hunting grounds where he'd lost track of his mother, the tall grass that swayed in the morning breeze, the distinctive rock formation that resembled a sleeping elephant, the stream that ran cool and clear along the eastern boundary. Tilly listened intently, mapping these landmarks against her mental image of the jungle. Together, they began to form a plan. Two unlikely companions united by circumstance and growing bonds of trust. As they prepared to set off together, the tiny turtle and the lost leopard cub, neither could have imagined the challenges that lay ahead on their journey. For the jungle is unforgiving to those who wander its paths, and danger lurks around every corner, behind every shadow, testing even the strongest of friendships and the bravest of hearts. But in that moment, as predator and prey stood side by side in the dappled sunlight of the clearing, something rare and beautiful had already begun to take root, something that would grow stronger with every step of their shared journey, something that would eventually melt the hearts of all who witnessed it. As the golden afternoon light began to soften toward evening, painting the jungle in rich amber hues that transformed ordinary leaves into translucent works of art, Tilly and Leo set off from the clearing. They made an unlikely pair. A tiny turtle whose shell barely rose above the forest debris, and a leopard cub whose spotted coat was designed by nature to vanish into dappled shadows. Yet there they were, venturing together into the vastness of the jungle, bound by circumstances neither could have imagined when the day began. Leo had described the hunting grounds where he'd last seen his mother in careful detail. A sprawling grassland bordered by a distinctive rock formation that resembled a sleeping elephant, with its trunk curled protectively around its body. A clear, winding stream that sang over smooth stones, tall golden grasses that whispered secrets when the wind passed through them. After considering these landmarks against her mental map of the surrounding territory, Tilly believed she knew the general direction they needed to travel. "We should head northeast," she explained, her small head extending from her shell to point toward a narrow gap in the trees where sunlight streamed through like liquid gold. "There's a winding path that way that eventually opens to a grassland that sounds very much like the one you described. The sleeping elephant rocks are a well-known landmark among the jungle creatures, though we call them by different names. I've passed them several times in my wanderings." Leo's eyes brightened with hope, but then clouded as Tilly continued. "But we won't make it before nightfall. The distance is too great, and the terrain between here and there is challenging. We'll need to find shelter when darkness comes." Leo's tail, which had begun to lift with excitement, drooped visibly at this news, dragging along the ground and leaving a small trail in the soft earth. "We have to stop for the night." "But my mother," his voice caught on the word, thick with emotion. "She must be so worried. What if she gives up looking? What if she thinks I'm—" He couldn't finish the thought, his amber eyes filling with fresh tears that he blinked back furiously, unwilling to appear weak again. "Your mother will still be searching for you tomorrow," Tilly assured him gently, understanding the fear behind his words. Leopard mothers are fiercely devoted to their cubs. She won't give up, Leo. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. She paused, letting her words sink in before adding the practical truth they both needed to acknowledge. "And traveling through the jungle at night is dangerous. even for a leopard cub with sharp claws and keen senses. There are creatures that hunt in the darkness that would see both of us as nothing more than a meal to satisfy their hunger. Leo swallowed hard, his small throat working visibly as he processed this reality. He nodded reluctantly, the movement causing a tear he'd been holding back to spill down his dusty cheek. "You're right. My mother always says night brings hunters with hungry eyes and silent paws. She never lets me wander after." The sun begins to set. A flicker of determination crossed his young face. She would want me to be smart, to stay safe until we can find each other. Exactly, Tilly agreed, relieved that the cub understood. Your mother taught you well. And tomorrow, with fresh energy and daylight to guide us, we'll cover much more ground. They moved forward, an odd procession through the undergrowth. Leo, with the boundless energy of youth despite his ordeal, would bound ahead a few paces, his natural agility allowing him to navigate fallen logs and tangled vines with graceful leaps. Then he would wait impatiently for Tilly to catch up, his tail twitching with nervous energy, paws kneading the ground as if he could somehow speed her progress through sheer will. For her part, Tilly maintained a steady pace, her small legs moving with determined persistence over fallen leaves, around tangled roots, and across patches of soft moss that cushioned her steps. Her progress was slow but methodical, each movement deliberate and efficient. Years of navigating the jungle floor had taught her to choose her path carefully, to avoid unnecessary obstacles that would drain her limited energy. "I could carry you," Leo offered, after watching Tilly laboriously navigate a particularly challenging section of terrain where exposed roots created a natural maze across their path. His head tilted to one side as he made the suggestion, ears perked forward with enthusiasm for his own idea. It would be faster, much faster. And then, maybe we could reach the grasslands before it gets completely dark. Tilly looked up at him, genuinely surprised by the offer. It was a gesture that defied the natural order of things. Predators didn't carry prey except to consume them later. Yet here was this young leopard, offering to help rather than harm. "Are you sure? I'm not exactly light, despite my size. My shell is quite solid. It's meant to protect me after all. I wouldn't want to tire you out." Leo puffed out his chest, standing taller as his pride was invoked. "I'm stronger than I look," he declared with the innocent boastfulness of youth. "Mother says I'll be a powerful hunter someday, one of the strongest in our territory. She's been training me to carry prey much heavier than you." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of his mother, a flicker of grief that momentarily dimmed the brightness in his eyes. But he shook it off with a determined twitch of his whiskers. "Besides, we're friends now, aren't we? Friends help each other." "Friends," Tilly repeated, tasting the word as if it were an exotic fruit she'd never sampled before. It seemed impossible. A turtle and a leopard, natural enemies in the order of things, now bound by this simple yet profound word. Yet here they were, their fates intertwined by circumstance and choice. "Yes, I suppose we are." With surprising gentleness that belied his predatory nature, Leo bent down and carefully took the edge of Tilly's shell between his teeth. His grip was delicate but secure, mindful of the living creature within the protective covering. He lifted her from the ground with a slight wobble of his head, unused to carrying something that wasn't limp with death, and placed her on a clear patch of earth several feet ahead. Then he looked at her expectantly, his expression a mixture of pride and uncertainty, seeking approval for his effort. That was helpful, Tilly admitted, slightly disoriented by the sudden change in perspective and the strange sensation of being carried through the air. She took a moment to regain her bearings, then offered Leo a grateful nod. "Thank you. That would have taken me quite some time to navigate on my own." Leo beamed with pride, his amber eyes bright with pleasure at her acknowledgement. "See? I told you I was strong. Mother says I have the makings of a great hunter in me." His chest swelled again with pride. But there was something poignant in his boasting. The desperate need of a child to believe that he was living up to a parent's expectations, even in their absence. Their progress improved with this new arrangement, though Leo was careful not to carry Tilly for too long at a stretch, setting her down to rest his jaw and to allow her to guide them when the path became unclear. As they traveled, Tilly pointed out features of the jungle that most creatures overlooked. The subtle indentations in the earth that marked animal trails worn by generations of passing feet. The variations in plant life that indicated changes in the terrain ahead. From the moisture-loving ferns that signaled a hidden spring to the hardy vines that thrived in drier soil. The almost imperceptible sounds that signaled water nearby, from the distinctive hum of insects that bred in still pools to the faint musical trickle of a stream not yet visible through the dense foliage. "How do you know so much?" Leo asked during one of their brief rests, genuine admiration in his voice as he watched Tilly identify a particular type of berry bush that would soon be bearing fruit. Information he filed away, with the practical mind of a predator always aware of where prey might gather. "Mother knows the hunting grounds, but you seem to know every leaf and stone and sound in the jungle. When you move slowly, you notice things that faster creatures miss," Tilly explained, a touch of pride in her own voice. "And when you're small and vulnerable, you learn to be observant. It's how you survive. Every shadow might hide a predator, every unusual sound might mean danger. So you learn to read the jungle like others read the stars, finding patterns, understanding meanings, recognizing warnings." Leo considered this with a thoughtful expression that made him look older than his years. "I never thought of it that way. Mother is teaching me to hunt, to track prey by scent and sound, to move silently and strike quickly. But your way of knowing the jungle is different. Not better or worse, just different." He paused, then added with surprising insight, "Maybe that's why we make good friends. We see the same jungle in different ways." Tilly felt a warm glow of appreciation for this young creature who could recognize wisdom in someone so different from himself. "That's very perceptive, Leo. The jungle has many lessons to teach, and many ways to learn them." As the light began to fade from the sky, painting the clouds in spectacular shades of pink and orange that silhouetted the treetops in dramatic relief, Tilly directed them toward a hollow at the base of a massive kapok tree. Its enormous trunk, wider than 10 leopards lined up nose to tail, rose majestically toward the canopy, while its sprawling roots created a complex network of arches and hollows at ground level. "This will be a good shelter for the night," she said, indicating a particular hollow formed where 3 large roots converged, creating a natural alcove protected on 3 sides. The roots form a natural barrier against larger predators, and the hollow is deep enough to hide us from passing eyes. The kapok is also considered a sacred tree by some creatures of the jungle. Many predators avoid hunting near them out of ancient respect or superstition. Leo peered into the dark space skeptically, his whiskers twitching as he assessed the dimensions with a predator's practical eye. "It looks cramped," he observed, poking a paw into the hollow to test its depth. "I like to stretch out when I sleep, to feel the open air above me. Mother and I usually rest on large branches where we can see the stars through the leaves." "It's safe," Tilly countered gently but firmly, understanding his reluctance, but unwilling to compromise on their security. And safety matters more than comfort right now. Tomorrow you can stretch all you want under the open sky, but tonight we need walls around us and shadows to hide in. Reluctantly, recognizing the wisdom in her words, even as he chafed against the confinement, Leo squeezed into the hollow. He circled 3 times, an instinctive behavior passed down through generations of his kind, before curling his spotted body into a tight ball that barely fit the space. His tail wrapped around to cover his nose, providing both warmth and comfort. Tilly settled beside him, her shell pressed against his warm fur. A strange juxtaposition of hard and soft, of prey and predator, coexisting in peaceful proximity. "I'm hungry," Leo whispered after a moment of silence, his voice small and slightly embarrassed, as if admitting to a weakness. His stomach punctuated the statement with an audible growl that seemed to echo in their small shelter. "I haven't eaten since yesterday, before the hunt with my mother. We were tracking a meal when I got distracted." The admission carried a weight of guilt, as if his current predicament was punishment for his lapse in attention. Tilly felt a pang of concern ripple through her. A hungry leopard, even a cub, was not an ideal sleeping companion for a turtle, or for any creature that might normally feature on a leopard's menu of preferred meals. Instinct urged her to retreat into her shell, to put that protective barrier between herself and potential danger. But she resisted. Leo had earned her trust, and showing fear now would only hurt him. "There are some berries growing near the base of the tree," she offered, remembering the cluster of dark, juicy fruits she had spotted when selecting their shelter. "They're not what you usually eat, but they'll help with the hunger. They're quite sweet and surprisingly filling." Leo wrinkled his nose, whiskers twitching in distaste at the suggestion. "Berries? I eat meat," he stated with the straightforward honesty of the very young. "Fresh meat that runs and leaps and tries to escape. Mother is teaching me to hunt properly, though I'm still learning. I'm not very good at the final pounce yet." His expression clouded again at the thought of his mother and the lessons now interrupted by their separation. "I know what leopards eat," Tilly said carefully, choosing her words with diplomatic precision. "But tonight, berries might have to do. You're too young to hunt alone, especially in unfamiliar territory and in the dark. Tomorrow we can look for something more suitable for a young leopard with growing teeth and claws." With a sigh that seemed too heavy for his small body, a sound that carried the weight of his hunger, his worry, and his longing for his mother, Leo nodded in resignation. "All right, berries it is. I suppose even mighty hunters must sometimes eat what they can find, not what they prefer." Together they ventured just outside their shelter, staying close to the protective presence of the kapok tree. Tilly guided Leo to the berry bush, showing him how to select the ripest fruits that would yield the most juice and sweetness. With delicate movements that contrasted with his natural predatory grace, Leo plucked the berries one by one, placing them in a small pile until he had gathered enough to take the edge off his hunger. After a meager meal of sweet, dark berries that stained Leo's muzzle purple and made him lick his paws repeatedly in a vain attempt to clean the sticky juice from his fur, they settled back into their shelter. The jungle had transformed with nightfall, coming alive with new sounds that created a different kind of music than the daytime chorus. The haunting hoots of owls claiming their hunting territories, the rhythmic chirping of crickets creating a pulsing backdrop of sound, the occasional distant roar that made Leo's ears twitch nervously and his body press closer to Tilly's reassuring presence. "Do you think my mother is safe?" he asked, his voice small in the darkness. barely audible above the nocturnal symphony surrounding them. The question revealed his true fear, not just that he might never find his mother, but that she might have met with harm while searching for him, that their separation might have put her in danger. "Your mother is a grown leopard," Tilly reminded him gently but firmly, understanding his need for reassurance. "One of the most powerful hunters in the jungle, respected and feared by most creatures who cross her path. I'm sure she's fine. Worried about you, yes, but perfectly capable of protecting herself while she searches." Leo was quiet for a long moment, and Tilly thought he might have fallen asleep, his breathing having slowed and deepened. Then he spoke again, his voice barely audible, a vulnerable whisper in the darkness that revealed the true depth of his fear. "What if we don't find her? What if she can't find me? What if I'm alone forever?" The raw emotion in his question made Tilly's heart ache with compassion. Despite his sharp teeth and claws, despite the predatory nature encoded in his very being, in this moment he was simply a child, frightened, lost, and longing for the security of his mother's presence. All creatures, Tilly reflected, no matter their place in the jungle's hierarchy, knew the primal fear of abandonment, of being left to face the world's dangers alone. "You won't be alone," she promised, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "No matter what happens, you have a friend now. And tomorrow, when the sun returns to light our path, we'll continue our search with fresh eyes and renewed hope. Your mother is out there, Leo, moving through this same jungle, her heart calling to yours across the distance. And we're going to find her. I promise you that." Leo shifted in the darkness, uncurling slightly from his tight ball to stretch one paw across Tilly's shell, as if needing the physical connection to anchor him in his uncertainty. Then he curled his body more tightly around her, seeking comfort in her solid presence, in the unwavering certainty of her voice. "Thank you, Tilly," he murmured, his words slurring slightly as exhaustion began to claim him. "I'm glad you found me. I'm glad you heard me crying, even though it's embarrassing for a future mighty hunter to admit he was crying like a newborn cub." "Even the mightiest creatures cry sometimes," Tilly assured him, touched by his honesty. "There's no shame in it. And if you hadn't cried, I wouldn't have found you, and we wouldn't be friends now. Sometimes our moments of greatest vulnerability lead us to our greatest strengths." Leo considered this philosophical observation with the gravity of youth taking its first steps toward wisdom. "I never thought of it that way," he admitted, his voice heavy with approaching sleep. "Mother always says that showing weakness invites attack. But you came to help instead." His breathing deepened, words coming slower as consciousness began to slip away. Maybe there's more than one kind of strength, more than one way to be brave." As Leo's breathing finally settled into the deep, regular rhythm of sleep, Tilly remained awake, listening to the night sounds of the jungle and contemplating the strange turn her life had taken. Yesterday, she had been a solitary turtle going about her quiet existence, concerned only with finding enough to eat and avoiding becoming a meal herself. Today, she was the companion and guide to a lost leopard cub, responsible not only for his physical safety, but for keeping his spirit from collapsing under the weight of fear and loneliness. She was now tasked with helping him find his family, navigating not just the physical terrain of the jungle, but the emotional landscape of his grief and worry. It was a heavy responsibility, and not without danger. Their journey would take them through territories ruled by creatures who might see an unaccompanied leopard cub as a threat to be eliminated or an opportunity to be exploited. They would face physical challenges that would test Tilly's endurance and Leo's patience. And there was always the possibility that their search might end in disappointment, that Leo's mother might have traveled too far in her own desperate search, or worse, might have encountered dangers from which even her strength and cunning could not protect her. But looking at the sleeping cub beside her, his face peaceful in slumber despite the worries that had creased it during waking hours, his breathing deep and trusting in her presence, Tilly knew she had made the right choice in answering his cries. There was something profoundly right about their unlikely friendship, something that transcended the natural order and spoke to deeper truths about compassion and connection. With this thought warming her heart like the first rays of morning sun, she finally allowed herself to drift into sleep. As the great jungle continued its nocturnal symphony around their small shelter, tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, but also new possibilities. And perhaps, if they were fortunate, a reunion that would make all their efforts worthwhile. What neither Tilly nor Leo could know, as they slumbered in their hidden hollow beneath the ancient kapok tree, was that they were not the only ones moving through the jungle with purpose that night. Other eyes watched the darkness, other hearts beat with determination, and other paths were being forged that would soon intersect with their own in ways that would test the bonds of their newfound friendship and reveal the true nature of courage in its many unexpected forms. Dawn broke over the jungle with a symphony of light and sound. Sunbeams filtered through the dense canopy, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor. The morning chorus of birds filled the air, their calls overlapping in joyful cacophony. Inside the hollow of the kapok tree, Leo stirred first. His amber eyes blinked open, momentarily confused by his unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory flooded back. He was lost, separated from his mother, and his only companion was... "Tilly?" he whispered, nudging the turtle's shell gently with his nose. "Are you awake? It's morning." Tilly emerged, slowly from her shell, her movements deliberate as she oriented herself to the new day. "Good morning, Leo. Did you sleep well?" "Not really," the cub admitted, stretching his limbs one by one. "I dreamed about Mother. She was calling for me, but I couldn't find her." His voice quavered slightly before he steadied it, determined to be brave. "But I'm ready to continue our journey now." They ventured out from their shelter into the fresh morning air. The jungle seemed less intimidating in daylight, its mystery softened by the golden glow of sunrise. "I'm still hungry," Leo confessed, his stomach rumbling audibly. "Berries aren't enough for a growing leopard." Tilly nodded understandingly. "We need to find you proper food. Let's head toward the stream I mentioned yesterday. Where there's water, there's usually prey." They set off, falling into the rhythm they'd established the previous day. Leo bounding ahead, then waiting for Tilly, occasionally carrying her over difficult terrain. As they traveled, Tilly continued her impromptu lessons about the jungle, pointing out plants with medicinal properties and signs of animal activity that even Leo's keen senses had missed. "You're like a walking library of jungle knowledge," Leo remarked, impressed by her wisdom. "When you live as long as turtles do, you accumulate quite a bit of information," Tilly replied with modest pride. "An observation is a powerful teacher." By mid-morning, they reached a small stream that gurgled merrily over smooth stones. Leo immediately crouched at the edge, lapping up the cool water with his rough tongue. Tilly joined him, drinking more delicately, but with equal appreciation. "Now, for your breakfast," Tilly said, scanning the surroundings. "Watch the water carefully. Do you see those ripples near that fallen log? Those are fish, small ones, but nutritious. Leo's eyes widened with interest, his predatory instincts awakening. Fish? I've never caught fish before. Mother hasn't taught me that yet. Then consider this your first lesson, Tilly said. Be patient. Stay very still. When a fish comes close enough to the surface. She didn't need to finish her instruction. Leo was already focused intently on the water, his body lowered in perfect hunting posture, tail twitching slightly with anticipation. For several minutes, he remained motionless, only his eyes following the movement beneath the surface. Then, with lightning speed, his paw darted into the water. There was a splash, a moment of chaotic movement, and then Leo proudly displayed a small, silvery fish flopping between his claws. I did it, he exclaimed, eyes bright with accomplishment. Well done, Tilly praised. Your mother would be proud. Leo's expression softened at the mention of his mother, but the sadness was tempered by his achievement. He quickly dispatched his catch and ate it, then returned to the stream's edge for more. By the time he had caught and consumed 3 fish, his hunger was satisfied, and his confidence noticeably bolstered. I feel much stronger now, he declared, licking his paws clean. Let's continue our journey to find Mother. They followed the stream for a while, as it seemed to be flowing in the general direction of the grasslands Leo had described. The going was easier here, with the banks providing a natural path through the dense vegetation. Tilly took advantage of their improved pace to elaborate on their plan. The sleeping elephant rocks should be visible from quite a distance once we reach the edge of the grasslands, she explained. From there, we can look for signs of your mother, tracks, perhaps, or marks she might have left to reclaim her territory. Leo nodded eagerly, his spirits lifted by the concrete plan and the nourishment in his belly. Mother taught me to recognize her scent marks, and she has a distinctive paw print. There's a small scar on her right front paw that leaves a mark in soft ground. That's excellent information, Tilly said approvingly. You're thinking like a tracker now. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a loud rustling in the undergrowth ahead. Both froze, instinctively sensing danger. Leo's fur bristled, and he moved protectively in front of Tilly, his young body tense with readiness despite his fear. From the bushes emerged a wild boar, not a full-grown adult, but a juvenile male old enough to have developed sharp tusks and a belligerent attitude. Its small eyes fixed on them with obvious hostility, and it pawed the ground threateningly. Don't move, Tilly whispered to Leo. Boars have poor eyesight, but excellent hearing and smell. If we stay still, it might lose interest. Leo obeyed, though every muscle in his body screamed for him to either attack or flee. The boar snorted, taking a step closer, its tusks gleaming dangerously in the dappled light. What do we do if it charges? Leo whispered, barely moving his lips. I'll retreat into my shell, Tilly replied calmly. You should climb the nearest tree. You're too young to take on a boar, even a juvenile one. The boar took another step forward, lowering its head in a clear prelude to charging. Leo tensed, preparing to leap for the low-hanging branch above them. But before either could move, a new sound cut through the tension, a deep, menacing growl that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. The boar froze, its belligerence instantly replaced by terror. It whirled around and crashed away through the undergrowth, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Leo and Tilly remained motionless, now facing a potentially greater threat. The growl had come from behind them, from something that had approached with such stealth that neither had detected its presence until it chose to reveal itself. Slowly, Leo turned his head. His eyes widened, and a small gasp escaped him. Tilly, unable to turn quickly, waited in suspense, her heart racing with fear for her young friend. "Leo?" she whispered. "What is it?" Leo's voice, when he finally found it, was a mixture of awe, fear, and something else. Something that sounded almost like hope. It's a leopard," he breathed. "A big one. And it's looking right at us." The tension in the air was palpable as the adult leopard regarded them silently, its powerful body perfectly still except for the slight twitching of its tail. In that moment, the fate of the unlikely friends hung in the balance, dependent on the intentions of this magnificent predator who now held their lives in its massive paws. The adult leopard stood motionless, its muscular body poised with a controlled power that made it one of the jungle's most formidable predators. Sunlight filtering through the canopy dappled its spotted coat, creating an almost magical effect that seemed to make the leopard shimmer between visibility and shadow. Leo trembled, caught between fear and a wild, desperate hope. His small body leaned forward slightly, nose twitching as he tried to catch the scent of the larger leopard. Tilly remained perfectly still beside him, understanding that any movement now might trigger predatory instincts that could prove fatal. The adult leopard took a step forward, its amber eyes, so like Leo's own, fixed intently on the cub. Then, in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, rich with emotion, it spoke a single word. "Leo?" The cub's entire body jolted as if struck by lightning. "Mother?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Then, louder, with growing certainty, "Mother! Mother!" In an instant, the tableau shattered. Leo bounded forward with reckless abandon, all caution forgotten in the overwhelming joy of recognition. The adult leopard, his mother, rushed to meet him, covering the distance between them in powerful strides that belied her size and weight. They collided in a blur of spotted fur, Leo burying himself against his mother's chest as she curled her larger body around him, enveloping him completely. Deep, rumbling purrs emanated from both leopards, creating a vibration that Tilly could feel even from where she remained, watching the reunion with a mixture of joy and wistful detachment. "My cub, my little warrior," Leo's mother murmured between licks that smoothed his fur and reaffirmed their bond. "I thought I'd lost you forever. I've been searching without rest, following your scent when I could find it, doubling back countless times when the trail went cold. I got distracted by a butterfly," Leo confessed, his words muffled against her fur. "It was so beautiful, with sunset-colored wings. When I looked up, you were gone, and I couldn't find your trail. I tried, Mother. I really tried to be brave and find my way back." "You were very brave," his mother assured him, continuing to groom him with tender, relieved strokes of her tongue. "Braver than you know. To survive alone in the jungle, even for a day and night, is no small feat for a cub your age." "I wasn't alone," Leo said suddenly, remembering his companion. He pulled back slightly from his mother's embrace, turning to look at Tilly, who had remained respectfully distant during their reunion. "I had help. I had a friend." For the first time, Leo's mother seemed to truly notice the small turtle watching them. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her protective instincts visibly warring with curiosity. "A friend?" she repeated, the word sounding foreign on her tongue, as if the concept of friendship between predator and prey was something beyond her understanding. Leo nodded enthusiastically, padding back to Tilly's side. "This is Tilly. She heard me crying yesterday and came to help instead of hiding. She kept me safe through the night and was helping me find you. She knows the jungle better than anyone." Leo's mother approached slowly, her movements deliberately non-threatening as she lowered her massive head to examine the turtle more closely. Tilly met her gaze steadily, showing neither fear nor deference, simply a quiet dignity that spoke of her own kind of strength. "You helped my son?" the mother leopard asked, her voice softer now, tinged with wonder and the beginning of gratitude. "He needed help," Tilly replied simply. "He was alone and afraid. I did what any creature with a heart would do." The mother leopard blinked slowly, processing this. Many creatures would have seen a leopard cub as a threat to be avoided or an opportunity to curry favor with larger predators by reporting his vulnerable state. Few would have offered direct aid, especially not those who might normally be our prey. She tilted her head, studying Tilly with new respect. "You took a significant risk." "Some things are worth the risk," Tilly said. "Friendship is one of them." "Friendship," the mother leopard echoed, tasting the concept as if it were new to her. She looked at her son, who had pressed himself against Tilly's shell in a gesture of affection that defied the natural order of the jungle. "It seems my son has learned something valuable during our separation. Something I might not have taught him myself." She lowered herself to the ground, assuming a less imposing posture as she addressed Tilly directly. "I am Nala, daughter of the great huntress Sarabi, protector of the Eastern Territories. I owe you a debt for the care you have shown my son. Among leopards, such debts are not taken lightly." "There is no debt," Tilly assured her. "Leo's company was payment enough. He is a remarkable cub, brave, curious, and kind-hearted. You should be very proud." Nala's eyes softened as she gazed at her son. "I am. More than he knows." She hesitated, then added with unexpected humility, "And perhaps he has wisdom to teach me as well. I have always taught him that the jungle is divided into the hunters and the hunted, that boundaries between different creatures exist for good reason. But you have shown him another way, that kindness can cross those boundaries, that help can come from unexpected sources." Leo, who had been following the conversation with wide, attentive eyes, suddenly spoke up. "Mother, can Tilly come with us, back to our territory? She could live near our tree, and I could visit her every day, and you could make sure no other predators bother her and—" "Leo," Nala interrupted gently. "Tilly has her own life, her own place in the jungle. We cannot simply take her from that because we wish to keep her company." Leo's face fell, the joy of reunion now tempered by the prospect of saying goodbye to his new friend. "But I'll miss her," he said softly, pressing closer to Tilly's shell. Tilly felt a similar pang of impending loss. Their friendship had been brief but profound, forged in the crucible of danger and mutual need. Yet she knew Nala was right. Their paths had crossed for a purpose, but they were not meant to run parallel indefinitely. "Your mother is wise," Tilly told Leo. "My home is here, near the stream and the kapok tree. It's where I belong. But that doesn't mean our friendship must end. The jungle is vast, but not so vast that paths cannot cross again." "Really?" Leo asked, hope brightening his eyes. "You mean I could visit you sometimes?" Tilly nodded. "I would like that very much. And perhaps, when you're older and have learned more of your mother's hunting skills, you could tell me about your adventures. I've never traveled far from this part of the jungle. I would enjoy hearing about the wider world through your eyes." Nala watched this exchange with thoughtful consideration. Then, to both Tilly and Leo's surprise, she made an offer. "The eastern ridge where we make our home overlooks a valley with a clear stream running through it. There are few predators there besides ourselves, and plenty of vegetation for a turtle's needs. If you wish to make a new home there, Tilly, you would be under my protection, No creature in my territory would dare harm a friend of my son. Tilly was momentarily speechless, touched by the generosity of the offer. It was unprecedented. A leopard offering protection to a creature it might normally consider prey. Yet she could see that Nala's offer was genuine, born of gratitude and perhaps something more. A recognition that the boundaries she had always lived by were perhaps more permeable than she had believed. "That is a most generous offer," Tilly said finally. "One that I will consider carefully. For now, though, I think it best if you take Leo home. Let him rest and recover from his ordeal. There will be time for decisions about the future later." Nala inclined her head in acknowledgement of Tilly's wisdom. "You are right. My son needs rest, and I must re-establish our territory markers. I've been away longer than is safe." She turned to Leo. "Say your goodbyes for now, little one. We can return another day, if you wish." Leo's farewell was emotional, involving much nuzzling of Tilly's shell and extracting multiple promises that this was not a final goodbye. Tilly assured him that their paths would cross again, that friendships forged in times of need often proved the most enduring. As Nala prepared to depart with her cub, she paused for a final word with Tilly. "You have taught my son, and me, an important lesson. The jungle's laws are not as rigid as I believed. There is room for compassion alongside survival, for friendship alongside the natural order." Her amber eyes, so like Leo's, held Tilly's gaze with newfound respect. "Until we meet again, wise one, may your shell protect you and your path remain clear." With that, mother and cub disappeared into the jungle, Nala moving with silent grace while Leo bounded alongside her, occasionally looking back to wave a paw at Tilly until they were swallowed by the dense foliage. Tilly remained by the stream for a long time afterward, contemplating the strange turn her life had taken and the unexpected friendship that had blossomed in the face of danger and difference. The jungle around her continued its eternal cycle. Birds calling, insects humming, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Yet something had changed, not in the forest itself, but in her perception of it. Boundaries could be crossed, differences could be bridges rather than barriers. And sometimes, the most unlikely connections proved the most meaningful. As she finally turned to make her way back to her familiar territory near the kapok tree, Tilly carried with her not just memories of her adventure with Leo, but a new understanding of her place in the great, interconnected web of jungle life. And perhaps, someday soon, she would consider Nala's offer. Not because she needed protection, but because some friendships were worth nurturing, even if they defied the expected order of things. After all, in a world where a turtle could befriend a leopard cub, anything was possible. 3 months later, a small turtle made her slow, deliberate way up the eastern ridge, following the sound of a clear stream and the distant roar of a leopard marking her territory. The journey had been long, but the welcome she received, from both mother and cub, made every difficult step worthwhile. And so began a new chapter in an unlikely friendship, one that would become a legend in the jungle, whispered among the creatures as evidence that courage, compassion, and connection could transcend the boundaries that seemed to divide them. For in the end, the greatest wisdom the jungle had to offer was this: that the heart recognizes no predator or prey, only the universal longing for understanding that unites all living things beneath the ancient, sheltering canopy they call home.